Okay, let's look at some obliques. So the obliques, we can kind of group in with the abdominals in as much as they're pulling the torso forward, right? So they share that tendon that we mentioned in the previous video, that tension, the tendon of the semilunar line there. But they're also grabbing hold of the hips through there, and then they're grabbing hold of the ribs by the serratus and the latissimus dorsi back there as well. And as well as pulling the torso forward with the abdominals, they're also pulling the torso to either side. So if this side on this guy's left fires, then it's going to pull him down to his left, right, down to this side. And if the opposite side fires, then it's going to pull him down to his right side. As with the abdominals, if the rib cage can't move, then the hips will then move, right? So if the rib cage doesn't move, you're going to have something like that. And again, you can try that on yourself. Sit on your side and either lift your rib cage towards your hips in that motion, or your hips towards your rib cage. Either way, it's going to work your obliques. And in terms of the mass conception of the obliques, well, this can be kind of confusing when you're looking at an anatomy book, because what you'll see is the obliques fill in this whole area here and this area there. And the reason why that's confusing is because you don't see the obliques so much on the rib cage here. I would think about the form in terms of the flat portion of it and the rounded portion of it, and the meaty portion of it, let's say. So the meaty portion is down here. And this is going to be something like a teardrop shape. And it's going to push out further than the hips, because what's happening is actually wrapping around and grabbing hold of. If I draw where it's grabbing hold of on the hips, somewhere like that, right, wraps over the top. Can be a little bit confusing as well, because especially men will store fat here, and it can be difficult to know whether you're looking at fat or obliques. Just a couple of ways of knowing. One is you poke it with your finger. If it's all squishy, then it's fat. If it's fairly firm, then it's obliques. But in terms of being able to look at it visually and know, well, what you're going to have when it's more muscular is more clearly defined planes. So it's going to be fairly flat, something like that. And if I add a bit of mass through here, you might see a plane through there that's fairly sharp. And as that's fat, then that form becomes a lot more rounded. But this can be confusing for people all the time. I remember someone showing me reference of a really chiseled, really defined fitness model and saying, why is he so fat? You know, because of these obliques. It can be difficult to tell sometimes. Important to notice that they are covering the bone there. So you will see this line in life, this line of the obliques, and just important to bear in mind that that's the line of the obliques, not the line of the bone. But the obliques are not covering the bone through there. Right, so that's why that's such an important bony landmark, because it's a bony landmark. Anything that's covered by muscle is not a bony landmark. So the iliac crest through there is not a bony landmark. But then back here where you have the pieces, that is a bony landmark again. So we can carry on the obliques up there, because what I've done here is I've massed in the meaty portion of it, but this will then, you know, these are still the same fibers coming from the flat portion of it. I'm conceiving of it as two separate movements, but of course it's all the same muscle. So something like that, going right the way up. Sometimes when people are really muscular, you can feel like these nodules of the obliques, so it can get a bit meatier here and not just down there. But generally speaking, you're not going to find that much up there, and even here, you're often going to find the bottom of the 10th rib more than you'll see oblique. So it becomes a bit of a balancing act. Okay, something like that. Let's call it for that video. I'm not sure. Oh, well, do you know what? Let's finish off the thought down here, because this can often confuse people. So this area down here, that's all oblique tendon. The thing that confuses people is that what you have is your internal obliques, which really I don't teach. And normally when I don't teach a form, or when I don't teach a muscle, it's because it doesn't impact the surface form so much. With internal obliques, they can do, you know, with athletes who have very, very strong core muscles, what you can get is a bulging down there that's caused by the internal obliques. So if you look at this in an anatomy book, what you'll see is just white of the tendon there. And that's tendon coming from the obliques, right? So there's the obliques, there's the rectus abdominis. This is their shared tendon through here. But underneath that you have the internal obliques, and so that can be impacting the first surface form. Nothing will cover this point here, which I'm just covering in skin, but that's all that covers it, right? The ASIS, anterior superior iliac spine, this bit of bone through there, that's only covered by skin. And then you have this line, sometimes very visible on some people, that line from there, that's coming from the ASIS, going to the symphysis pubis. That's the inguinal ligament, or inguinal ligament of the groin. And you know, it's super rare that we're going to see ligaments in life, but that's trying to think of another ligament that's important. Well, they're all important, you know, if you don't want to fall apart. What ligament does is it binds bone to bone, as opposed to tendon, which binds muscle to bone. But yeah, as far as I can think, that's the only ligament that's really manifests itself on the surface. So yeah, that's that for the obliques. Back here, what I can't show you is where the obliques are grabbing hold of, because they actually grab hold of the latissimus dorsi muscle. It's one of those rare examples of muscle on muscle action, which is a fairly infrequent occurrence. So that's one example of where we see it. We see it a lot in the face, but generally speaking, you know, muscles go to bone. Nothing wrong with muscles going to other muscles. It's just less usual. Right, okay, let's call it there for this video, and I'm going to take a look at the pecs in the next video, and then we can spin around to the back again.